The first revolution is when you change your mind about how you look at things and see that there might be another way to look at it that you have not been shown.
Peace and blessings. Peace and revolutionary blessings, I should say. I am your distributor of information, Brother Carr, also known as the KCOG. Why am I here? To dismantle white supremacy. If you do not understand white supremacy, what it is, and how it works, everything and anything you understand will only confuse you. That is a quote by Neely Fuller Jr. And actually, it's time for an OG Minute. I want to welcome everybody into the program, and we're going to get into our OG Minute by following up on Black Lives Matter. For those who have known me or have heard my programs, I have said in the past and will continue to say that Black Lives Matter was a slogan. It was not a movement, and we were duped into believing it was a movement because of all the events that was going on in the country during the time that the Black Lives slogan came about. And I'm going to prove, and everybody generally has heard that the organization's leadership has fell apart and has pretty much stolen $90 million in donations and have not distributed any of those funds to the masses of people or to the families that got them their notoriety, that got them these donations. The Breonna Taylors, the Michael Browns, the George Floyds, that none of these families got any of this $90 million that these immoral women ripped off from our community. I've heard one brother call them grave robbers, which best suits what they did. And he also called them ancestral treason. They should be tried for ancestral treason, because as these people transition to the ancestors, and even though their transition wasn't natural, and it was forced upon them by the police departments across this country, these immoral women stole this money off the blood that was shed by these people in our community. Now, there's no other way I can put this, but the reason I was against Black Lives Matter was for two reasons. The first reason was there was no real balance in the leadership. When you looked at the leadership of Black Lives Matter, you had three women who associated with the LBGQ, whatever it is, community, and I'm not holding that against them. What I'm holding against them is the fact that they took a slogan, then took all this money out of our community and didn't even pay the people who died and gave them their notoriety. These are immoral people. I don't care what you say. Come at me if you want. They're immoral. So with that said, let's go ahead and get into the presentation. This piece you're going to hear today is called Remembering Black Lives Matter. And as you can see, it's posted on YouTube. Hold on. Now you can see it's posted on YouTube. And I really want you guys to take a look at this because this particular person called the Upper Echelon Gamers, I don't know much about him, but that's who produced this. But he did a very good job in breaking down the finances and of the organization, and it led down a rabbit hole to other organizations that supported Black Lives Matter, and you get a better idea about how they were able to raise this large amount of money. $90 million these people raised. Let's get into it.
All right, before getting started, I have to make something very, very clear. When I say the phrase BLM or Black Lives Matter, I'm talking about a codified nonprofit charity organization called BLM-GNF. This refers to Black Lives Matter Global Network Foundation, which operates an umbrella company supporting the Black Lives Matter movement. This is extremely important because there's a difference between corporate entities and conceptual ideas. Black Lives Matter as a concept is not something I'm trying to disparage in the slightest right now or even discussing today. However, Black Lives Matter as a global charity is a disaster. To lay all of this out, I need to make a few distinctions and build a foundation. Black Lives Matter as an institution was founded and grown between the years of 2014, roughly, and 2016. During this time, and also going forward until about 2020, Black Lives Matter Global was not an actual self-governed charity/nonprofit organization because it utilized financial partners, two of them to be precise, called Thousand Currents and Tides. These were partners that handled, among other things, inflow and outflow of capital, most importantly, which positioned BLM as a non-public charitable company, but not a traditional nonprofit. In the grand scheme of things, this period of time doesn't really matter. There are some scandals surrounding these financial partners, sort of, but for the sake of clarity and precision, we will focus directly on BLM right now and speak about the most relevant period of time, which is mid to late 2020 and going forward. November of 2020 is when Raymond Howard, remember that name, signs an affidavit attached to the bylaws of what we now know as BLM Global Network Foundation. These bylaws, containing information on the general structure and individual duties of different BLM executives, also contains the following, quote, Section 4.4 Executive Director. The Executive Director shall be the Chief Executive Officer of the corporation. He or she shall have charge of all funds and securities of the corporation, shall endorse the same or deposit or collection when necessary, and deposit the same to the credit of the corporation in such banks or depositories as the Board of Directors may from time to time authorize. End quote. That's the important part. He or she shall have charge of all funds and securities of the corporation. And in July of 2020, according to their own website, a woman named Patrice Cullors was named as Executive Director of the soon-to-be official BLM Global Network. Let's recap. BLM, for the first 5 or so years-ish, was an organization with financial partners who made it possible for them to avoid the official charity classifier, meaning that they were not subjected to standard disclosure requirements. In 2020, they made the switch and appointed Patrice Cullors to the position of Executive Director. Now, during this transition, something else happened as well. As BLM began to step back from their initial partners, they needed to assume financial independence as well. According to documentation from Baker Tilly, as per the filings of Thousand Currents themselves, there would be a transfer of $66.49 million directly to BLM Global. This transfer was approved in October of 2020, and also, one last item, in December of 2020, BLM Global was officially recognized as a charity organization, gaining tax exemption status from the government and becoming subject, plain as day, in the notice right there, black and white, to mandatory 990 form completion, which makes certain financial information public, of public record and available to everyone in accordance with laws pertaining to their status. BLM became a fully fledged, nearly $100 million in totality global charity with strong grassroots awareness in the United States especially, and an official corporate structure. What could go wrong? The answer? A lot. A lot can go wrong, and a lot is going wrong, because this company's financial reality is a disaster. Let's start with BLM's very own financial snapshot for the 2020 fiscal year. This is a pretty lengthy PR and marketing puff piece, if you will, but one section has some very important figures. According to BLM Global themselves, 2020 was a year in which just in 2020 by the way.
Now, a reason I stopped it there is by the numbers. They say they raised 90 million. And you heard him say that as soon as they worked with their fiscal sponsors, Tides and Thousand Currents, they then became an official 501c3, and at that point transferred $66 million to the Black Lives Matter Global Network, and then appointed Patrice Cullors as the executive over that. Now, the big question is, here they're saying in 2020 they raised $90 million, and he showed you that $66 million was transferred. Where's the other $28 million? It goes down that and he's going to get into this, but I want y'all to pay attention to something here on their financial snapshot. It says 21.7 million in grants distributed to more than 33 organizations, 23 of which were led by LGBTQIA people and BLM chapters. Now, he's going to tell you, and we already know, that a lot of the Black Lives Matter chapters, like in Ferguson, St. Louis, Missouri, in Miami, in DC, in Philadelphia, in Detroit, these chapters never received any funding. They are reporting they never received any funding from Black Lives Matter Global Network. Okay? But 23, which were led by, see, this exposes the whole thing with Black Lives Matter. This was never about Black Lives Matter. This was about LGBTQ people. This is what this was about. They just used the Black Lives Matter as a front. Okay? Now, I don't care if y'all come after me. I'm showing you truth. All right? Now, if you don't want to accept truth, that's on you. But the truth of the matter is, these ladies made no bones about the fact that they were lesbians. And of course, they would support the LGBTQIA community. Now, I don't have a problem with that, but don't do it under the guise of Black lives. That's immoral.
$90 million were raised. The general breakdown included $8.4 million in operating expenses, and most importantly, $21.7 million in grants dispersed to more than 33 organizations and chapters, chapters being individual groups of BLM activists spread across the country. Here's where things start to get...
My friends, I'm crunched for time and I'm crunched for resources.
Pretty interesting. Reported by AP News, a group called the BLM 10, composed of 10 highly prominent chapters in the movement, have openly begun to state that they receive no financial support whatsoever. The reality doesn't seem to match the picture here, and since birth, BLM as a corporate structure has failed to adequately support their individual chapters. By those chapters' own claim, that's their words, not mine, culminating in a year where supposedly $90 million came in and $21 million went out. Interesting, but let's go even deeper. When actually applying for their status of tax exemption, BLM filled out various different financial statements. One of those statements contained the following. This right here appears to be a claim that $12.7 million were spent on professional fees, which is similar to operating expenses, but not nearly the same number. What's going on here? To explain this, I need to jump around a bit and showcase a little bit of context on how exactly this movement's governing executives, primarily Patrice Cullors at the time, feel about transparency. This right here is a YouTube video from an interview Cullors did in April of 2022. In this interview, she says the following.
Like, for a long time, I'm not at Black Lives Matter anymore. I left last year, but for a long time, we weren't a nonprofit on purpose. We took 7 years to become an actual 501c3, and these 2 short years.
In other words, when the donations
not even
started
2
coming
years
in,
yet,
then she realized
that
it was
we've been
time to
an
become a
actual
nonprofit.
501c3. It's been so under attack. Wow, this doesn't seem safe for us. This 990 structure, this nonprofit system structure, this is like deeply unsafe. Like, this is being literally weaponized against us, against the people we work with. I can't tell you how many people are like, am I next?
That's a really odd quote when you consider the fact that this 990 structure simply refers to government-subsidized charities being required to make certain financial disclosures, something that BLM to this day has not ever adequately done, but more on that later on. She describes the term 990 as triggering, and in a vacuum that might seem entirely nonsensical, but with some further context we can start to understand why. Publicized financial disclosures as a general concept here is basically now the enemy of BLM Global. It turns out that Patrisse Cullors in 2016 and beyond, during and after the BLM movement began to gain traction, nationally speaking, purchased not 1, not 2, not 3, but 4 expensive real estate properties for over $3 million total. One of these was a mini compound in LA for over $1.4 million, purchased in early 2021. Other reports allege that she was even browsing property at elite and extremely private locations worldwide, such as the Albany, a real estate source in the Bahamas. Focusing on only what has been categorically proven, Patrisse Cullors bought over $3 million in luxury homes right during the same period of time where Black Lives Matter was receiving donations. And though it's very difficult to prove a direct link between these two realities, we do have a bit of paperwork here. One connection that stands out particularly bad is a partnership between a company named Trap Heels and BLM, where BLM Global, plus a couple other activist groups Cullors led at the time, paid nearly $250,000 for an election night live stream and general consulting. But Trap Heels was only formed a couple of days before partnering with BLM directly in the first place, and was created by the father of Patrisse Cullors' own son. On many separate occasions, there were interviews and articles about the connection between these two figures, an activist leader and an emerging artist commissioned for hundreds of thousands of dollars by BLM-associated groups. And not once did either of them acknowledge that they had a child together. By itself, perhaps not all that impactful. It really isn't, but we are really just getting started here. Looking at the board and officers list for Black Lives Matter Global, we see 3 different names: Patrisse Cullors, Shalomia Bowers, and Raymond Howard. This is where it gets a bit complicated, but bear with me because these names are going to start forming kind of a pattern. Black Lives Matter Global isn't just one entity, it's a network. That's very important. Within Black Lives Matter Global are things like the Black Lives Matter PAC, also known as the Black Lives Matter Political Action Committee. They love to use committees. Or Black Lives Matter Grassroots. There are many of these groups, which are almost always led by the 3 individual people we just named. Example, Shalomia Bowers is the agent of records and the treasurer for Black Lives Matter PAC. One of the specific names we can focus on is Reform LA Jails. This offshoot of Black Lives Matter actually has records we can look at, unlike most of the organization, which is pretty rare if you think about it, and those records are extremely interesting. But even more interesting is this. In official documentation for the Reform LA Jails Committee, we can see that a man named Christman Bowers is the treasurer, and Patrisse Cullors is the controlling office holder. Bowers, where have I heard that before? What's even better is that the medium profile for Shalomia Bowers is actually at Christman, which would indicate to me that there is a very clear link between these two people, who I don't even think are different people, just one man using different names on different sections of the
Make sure you do this before you start your day.
If you want to know why you're so tired,
BLM spiderweb. Over the span of just a few months, this committee within BLM sent tens of thousands of dollars to not 1, not 2, but all 3 of these BLM global executives through connected, what I would describe as shell companies. First is a series of payments to Bowers Consulting, almost $20,000 at a time, and Bowers Consulting shows its founder and president on their own website to be Shalomia Bowers. Next, not even 2 months later, within the same actual financial statement period, the same offshoot of BLM sent tens of thousands of dollars to Janaya and Patrisse Consulting. That's the one owned by Patrisse Cullors, And right around the same
And
time
her
as well,
current wife.
tens of thousands of dollars were being sent to none other than Trap Heels LLC, the company owned by the father of Patrisse Cullors' son, that had been created just days before an initial partnership with BLM. There's more. BLM Global also formed a public relationship and partnership, financial partnership, with a company called New Impact Partners. As quoted on their homepage, Raymond is the one who said this. Well, Raymond, perhaps being none other than Raymond Howard of the BLM Global leadership, is the brother of the woman who created New Impact Partners. And when confronted with this information, the quote was deleted, Howard purged his entire LinkedIn profile of anything mentioning BLM, and now the only references available are from Internet Archives. The spiderweb just doesn't end. Over $70,000 was funneled during that same 2-month period to Carol and Asha Bandel Incorporated. Asha Bandel is the woman who co-wrote Patrisse Cullors' memoir years prior, and this is all happening through a committee to reform LA prisons. Hundreds of thousands of dollars are being funneled in just this tiny little snapshot that's available to us into connected consulting firms that the executives on the committee own themselves, as well as their direct family members and personal friends. This is just one of the subcommittees that BLM Global contains, and nearly all of the others that I have looked at are owned and controlled by the exact same people. What makes matters even more suspect here is the behavior when confronted. This video right here, a re-upload by the way, is the 1-year reflection on BLM's progress after George Floyd. This video takes place at a $6 million mansion, bought and paid for by BLM Global, and they also kind of tried to obfuscate that fact. When confronted by this, Patrisse Cullors deleted all content from her entire YouTube channel, which I believe contained other videos shot from the same location as well, and went dark. She had resigned from the position of director immediately after scrutiny over her multiple million-dollar homes broke out, but maintains that all of this is entirely unrelated. The problems never end. After Patrisse Cullors stepped down as director, the organization named 2 other prominent activists as the next co-directors. But those activists had to clarify on social media that they actually have nothing to do with BLM and could not accept the job because they could not reach an amicable agreement, even though BLM had told everyone that they were now the next co-directors, right? So there's a breakdown of communication there, at the very least. The office for BLM Global, this is a good one, listed on multiple government documents, it's not real. Both the actual and misspelled versions direct to locations that have no connection to BLM. More recently, the organization used an accounting trick to avoid filing complete 990 forms, and remember, the ex-director is triggered by 990 forms, and as a result, fell out of legal compliance in 10 different states around the country. Some of those have resumed, actually, but their spotty reporting is a chronic and recurring problem. Another example would be the Reform LA Jails Committee, which as far back as 2019 was already being warned for failing California compliance requirements, even back then. In a letter sent to Mr. Bowers, it was stated that the group is not performing their legal obligation when it comes to filing semi-annual reports, and this pattern of neglectful or even non-existent financial transparency plays out across the entire organization. What I see, and in my opinion, this is a spiderweb of insiders using shell companies funneling money into their own pockets. The current situation seems to be that there are tens of millions of dollars just sitting somewhere or floating around as people try to get their hands on it, but hardly any of it actually goes to or will ever get to the people it was intended for. As a result, when we think of BLM, it's important to acknowledge a separation between concept and company, because conceptually there is support, but from a corporate perspective, BLM is an unmitigated disaster that is being rightfully scrutinized and criticized. Again, important distinctions need to be made here. The actions of 3 leaders do not necessarily reflect on the entirety of a movement, but having actually looked at the organization itself over the past year or so, I thought it was time to do a video. That's it though. Links are down below to support. Please consider.
Now, what he said at the end is correct. The actions of these 3 people shouldn't reflect on the Black Lives Movement itself, except one thing. It was never a movement. It was a slogan. You tried to make it into a movement, okay? Which started to work. But a movement, if it's not funded, is going to die. Just look at the civil rights movement. Look at the Black Power movement, the real black liberation movements that took place in the 60s and 70s. When you take the funding away, they will die. Now, I want you to take a look at the companies that started to help Black Lives Matter with two things: getting their structure for the 501c3 and getting that approved, well, maybe three things. And then the other thing is finding the funding sources to which they receive their funds. So let's take a look at Thousand Current. And as best as I can go through this, with the exception of maybe one or two, this is mostly a feminist organization. And they say we fund, connect, and walk alongside movement support or organizers who are transforming their communities. So of course, Black Lives Matter would be a perfect candidate for this. Now, you also heard him mention that there was a scandal with the organization. The scandal that he is referring to is when Black Lives Matter, with Currents, they removed their board of directors page. Okay, now you can find the staff, and that's pretty much the people you see in that picture. You can find the staff, and as I said, this is mostly a feminist organization because they are led by women. All right. Not to say that all women and women's group are feminists in nature, but when you go in and read, you can begin to understand that this is exactly what this organization is, as far as what I can determine at this point. You can go in and check it out yourself. Okay, but as I'm scrolling through, this is the staff, but they totally removed their board of directors. Why did they remove the board of directors? Maybe it had something to do with this name, Susan Rosenberg. Now, for those of you who are familiar with the civil rights and the real black liberation movement that went on during the 60s and 70s, Susan Rosenberg was a part of the Weathermen, or the Weather Underground, or as she changed the group a little later in her career, she called it under a different name. But Susan was also, as you can see right here, she was on the board of Thousand Currents, okay? Now, why am I bringing Susan up? Well, Susan has some history that is very much connected to the Black liberation movement of the time. Number one, she claims to be one of the people or groups that helped liberate Assata Shakur from jail and help her escape the country. Now that's power. I ain't got no problem with that because I'm all about Assata Shakur. But she also was involved, according to her history, in the Brinks truck robbery, along with Mutulu Shakur and the New African Movement. Now, the interesting thing about her is two things. Is that number one, we all know Mutulu Shakur was captured and has been in prison for all this time, to where Susan Rosenberg escaped capture for over 3 years. And then when she was captured in 2000, President Bill Clinton pardoned her. Pardoned her, but Mutulu Shakur never got a pardon. Still rotting in jail right now. And the strange thing about it is that one Rudy Giuliani at the time was the U.S. District Attorney and led the Rosenberg's prosecution, though she was indicted for planning and driving in the Rockland County case. Giuliani declined to pursue prosecution because of the long sentence Rosenberg received on the other charges. And then former federal prosecutor Andrew McCarty, who convinced a federal judge to oppose Rosenberg's request for parole in 1999, wrote that Giuliani also didn't want to put the public and robbery victims through a second trial. Yet Mutulu Shakur still sits behind jail. In jail. The Rosenberg attorneys sought to parole on the basis that Rosenberg had been a model prisoner and had rejected her previous terrorist activities and beliefs. They also argued that her sentence was extreme compared to the charges upon which she was convicted, and that McCarty's use of the robbery to argue against parole was invalid because Giuliani had dismissed the charges. I mean, what the? But here's what's interesting. After Rosenberg's parole request was denied, President Bill Clinton commuted her sentence on his last day in office. She was one of 176 people protected by Clinton that day, including indicted fugitive March Rich, and former Clinton White House associate Susan McDougal. Sorry about that. McDougal was convicted of the bank fraud in the Clintons' Whitewater. In other words, she was the patsy that took the fall in Clinton's Whitewater scandal investigation. Clinton also commuted the 40-year sentence of 40 years now of Rosenberg co-conspirator Linda Sue Evans. Evans was in prison for 11 counts of false identity used to purchase firearms and for harboring a fugitive related to the armed car murders. When they did the Brinks robbery, 2 of the guards and an officer was killed. She was also convicted in 1990 for participating in a number of terrorist bombings, including the U.S. Capitol building. Now, Susan Rosenberg's organization was also linked to this, but there's more, okay, where things are getting kind of shady, and you got to understand the shadiness of all this. Rosenberg's commute brought bipartisan condemnation from Giuliani, Schumer, and at least 2 police officials. Officials cited by the New York Times at the time of the commutation included then New York City Police Commissioner Bernie Kerik, who had escorted Rosenberg to and from her jail, and Rockland County Union police officer David Troyce. Troyce said he believed Rosenberg participated in the armored car robbery, a claim she denied. Kerik said the commutation sickened him, being commuted by Clinton sickened him. And I just wanted you to know this connection with these people. Now, let's go and look at the other one. This is Thousand Currents. Here's Tides. Tides is a philanthropic partner and non-profit accelerator dedicated to building a world of shared prosperity and social justice. Nothing wrong with that. But these are the two organizations that help them not only build their 501c3, but to get they set up the mechanism to allow people to donate through them to Black Lives Matter. Okay? Now here's the last piece we're going to look at. You heard him say that Black Lives Matter was labeled delinquent by California AG over murky finances. Okay? And here we are with the three stooges, three crooks, the three immoral people, the three lesbians, self-confessed. That is the Attorney General AG. And here is a copy of the letter that the AG has sent to them. Okay? And it pretty much tells them that they have a certain amount of time to get their finances properly filed with the 990, and that if they do not get these finances filed within this certain period of time, that they would be personally liable for the officers, the board members, and the preparer of their 990 would all be personally liable for all penalties that will be assessed at that time. And if you've been following Patrisse Cullors since the money came in, she became extremely weird and defensive. I saw her on several programs where they were asking her about this, and the defensiveness that she is using is clear. It's very clear that this woman is hiding something, and now we know what she was hiding. So that's my look at Black Lives Matter and why I feel that this organization was not good from the start, because you have to hear some things when you say Black Lives Matter. Okay? You have to understand that that means in every role we play, not just a police killing, but also the killing that is going on in our community by us. Okay? No one's approaching that in that way when they say Black Lives Matter. And mostly when you hear that from the right, including myself, I would get very irritated because I knew it was true, but I hated hearing it from them, which is the truth. So with the killing that's going on in our community, it seems like if Black lives really matter, that one of the things that these people would have done with this money was to invest in youth organizations to try to train youth to look at this world and themselves in a different way. When you say Black Lives Matter, it also means that you are prepared to look at the truth about our communities. And when I say look at the truth about our community, when you really look at the Black community, you could see the self-hatred. You could see how much we hate ourselves, okay? That's because we've been brainwashed and conditioned to be this way. And I have been trained to expose how brainwashing works in this country and that it is something very real. And it was something that was used against us. What we have to evaluate or look at is how Black culture was flipped. How did we get a point to where in the 1930s, 40s, and 50s, the murder rate within the Black community was lower then than it was in the 80s, 90s, 2000, and today? How could that be? When you say Black Lives Matter, that encompasses all of this. Why didn't, with $90 million, if you were really concerned about Black lives, then you would understand that a part of the process is creating an educational system that would uplift us and give us our true history. That's what it's about. And they know it. That's why you hear them talking about critical race theory, where they're using it in the incorrect form altogether. But what they're pointing out is they do not want to make their children feel bad about slavery in this country, even though it's the truth. Yet and still, we send our children to their public school system, and they have to hear time after time how their ancestors came here as slaves. Come on, y'all. Come on. Y'all say Black Lives Matter. That's why I knew it wasn't a movement. It was a slogan. Yes, Black Lives Matter. I believe that. But it's a slogan. Because if they really mattered, then we would change the educational system. Matter of fact, we would end public education for our children and move public education into something that we can control so that we can give our children their real history. We did not come here in 1619 as slaves. We came here as African people who were enslaved. So when you say Black Lives Matter, it's more than just police killing us in the street. It also means that we have to re-educate our children. And we have to re-educate our children to make our children feel as good about themselves as white counterpart children feel about themselves. Amos Wilson was clear. The great Dr. Amos Wilson was clear when he says that the educational system does not serve your children. it serves the children of the former slave masters. Absolutely correct. But do we hear him? John Henry Clark says that, and this is the same with Amos Wilson, is that we are educated to solve the problems of our white masters. We are not educated to solve our problems. Because if that was true, we wouldn't need to use the slogan Black Lives Matter anymore, because we've already proved it through changing the educational system. Through dismantling the imperialist capitalist system, which created the conditions that brought us here. Do we not understand this? Yet and still, we support capitalism. But y'all say Black Lives Matter. Really? Every facet of our lives here in America has been influenced by white supremacy purely on the fact that they are not telling you the truth about who we are as a people. They know. It's us who don't know. It's us that don't know. Because they know. Carlos, what are you talking about? OG, what are you talking about? I'm not going to get into it here. Because number one, your minds aren't ready for it. Because you're too brainwashed. You're so brainwashed you can't see the reality of what's happening to us. So that's why we fall for these slogans. And then try to turn a slogan into a movement. You know, that's like pushing your best example, religion. Today is Easter Sunday. And for every black child in this nation who came up in the public school system, who came up in churches across this country, they're now celebrating Easter Sunday, where I will challenge any of you to go into the Bible and find in the Bible where they talk about Easter Sunday. I mean, even when I'm showing you how we're duped, but yet we say Black Lives Matter. But we don't correct all the things that have led us to the point to where the majority of our children do not see that Black Lives Matter. Okay? The killing that's going on in our community right now is a direct result of what I just said. Now, getting on point again with Easter and how this pagan holiday is pushed upon our people to believe in a damn rabbit and the rebirth of an egg. Okay? And y'all don't even understand the symbolism behind it. Okay? Do you know the rebirth they're talking about is the sun crossing the vernal equinox? And now it's starting to go back into the northern hemisphere? That creates the season we call spring. Okay? What happens during spring? Okay? Most animals know that the spring of the year is their time to procreate, which means they are given birth during this time of year. What else happens during this time of year in spring? Don't the trees turn green again? Don't the grass turn green again? Why do you think they put green grass in the Easter baskets? Why do you think they use the symbolism of the egg, which is telling you this is the time in nature where rebirth is happening? Black Lives Matter, right? But you won't teach your children the truth. Easter is a pagan holiday. Have anybody ever wondered why Easter is never on one set date per year? Y'all grab a pen and paper and write this down, because I already gave you the first part, the vernal equinox, the first day of spring. The second part is the first full moon after the first day of spring. Now, if the first day of spring is during a full moon, don't count that. It's the first full moon after the first day of spring. And you saw that this year. Hey, tonight, if you don't believe me, go look out your window and see if there's not a full moon. The first day of spring, the first full moon, the following Sunday is Easter. You can count on it every single year. First day of spring, the first full moon after the first day of spring, the following Sunday is Easter. Okay? Now, you got your children running around believing that a damn Easter bunny has something to do with the resurrection of Christ, when it has nothing to do with it whatsoever. And here's the other thing for you fools that ain't even figured it out. Good Friday. Good Friday. Now, for you who read the Bible and understand the Bible, doesn't it say that it was 3 full days and 3 full nights from the time Christ was crucified to the time that he rose? Can y'all do math? Obviously y'all can't. Because how can you have Good Friday and then 2 days later you have Easter Sunday, when the Bible tells you that he was entombed for 3 full days and 3 full nights? How could you have Good Friday and then Sunday be Easter Sunday? Y'all figure that out for me. But yet Black Lives Matter, and y'all going around telling your children these lies. And then you wonder why your children hate themselves. Well, Carlos, what Easter has to... Because you're lying to them and they understand these lies. Do you know when children grow into adults, they look back at Easter and they say, damn, that's the silliest damn thing I ever heard of. Especially if they are in the church and they're reading their Bible and they read that passage that says that Jesus was entombed for 3 full days and 3 full nights before he rose, then the math would tell you that Good Friday to Easter Sunday is some bull. But we keep passing this crap on to our children. We do the same with Christmas. I want you to go into your Bible and tell me in your Bible where it tells you to celebrate Christmas. You see, this is the brainwashing that goes on in our community that puts us in a position to where we can't see the truth, so we can't move toward the truth, okay? Now, you might not believe it, but I'm telling you, these generations are starting to figure out that there's a lot of BS going on in our society. The whole educational system, as I mentioned earlier, those who went through public school system during my time, I'm a baby boomer, I'm 68 years of age. Tell the truth, when you went to college, you found out that the educational system in the hood was deficient. You found that out, and you know you did. For even some of y'all that were scoring A's and B's all throughout high school, you get into college and you find out that your education from public high school was deficient. And now you got to work harder to catch up, especially if you end up going to a school with other white students, okay, which most of us do. Because I know when I went to school the first time, when I left high school and went on to college the first time, even though it was junior college, in the classroom, I was smoked by white students. And I could tell they knew more than I did, and that the education that I received was deficient. Then I had to spend my time catching up, taking menial beginning courses to catch up. And then all through college, they're teaching me about philosophy, sociology, about math, about literature. And all through college, I did not see people like me reflected in the educational system. Okay? This is a little bit of a rant right now because I have to put this out here. So even within the HBCUs, the main course of the education matches the same purpose of the education in any white university, which is to create an occupation for you to go to work for some imperialist capitalist company within the United States. And y'all know for a fact that the majority of you were educated to go to work for someone else, not to create jobs and create companies for yourself. Even your little sororities and fraternities, there is something that we call the boule, which were men and at some point women who were business owners back in the early 19th century, 20th century, around the 1900s. They were actual business owners, and they created this organization to pluck off the top of college graduates to bring them into this organization so that they too will be business owners. That's the level in which you get that kind of training. But even then, it doesn't make sense because, as I said, the same system, the same wicked, evil system that brought us to this shores was a system of capitalism and imperialism. So how can we support such an evil system that would see human beings as chattel slaves? How do we support that? And we're still talking about Black Lives Matter here. Where's the infrastructure? Where is the structure that these fraternities and sororities and these other secret organizations, you Masons, you Elks, you Eastern Star, where is the structure you put in place to help our children know who they are? Where is it? But you talk about Black Lives Matter. See, I'm going to show you the last part of this, and I'm going to end my little rant today because there's another piece here that I need y'all to see so that y'all can get the real message as to what's going on here. This is Facebook, and I'm going to show you the real thing. Now, we're talking Easter Sunday, right? I'm going to show y'all who your real masters are, okay? You can read this. It says, "Congratulations, unexpected money is about to come to your way." It was even written wrong. Accept or decline. Look at this. 303,000 people like that. 43 badges or awards were given. But look at the comments. 454,000 comments means they either accept or decline. And I bet you going through it, the majority of them accept it. And then look at the shares. 12,000 shares. Okay, you want to know who your God is? Here's your God right here. Money. Now, I'm going to prove to you I'm correct. Moral confusion, sexual confusion, gender confusion, author of confusion, Satan. Y'all say y'all religious folks, that y'all in the black church, that y'all believe in God. Do you see only 30 people like this? Do you see there was only 9 comments? Do you see there was only 2 shares? And you want to know who your real God is? Well, it's at the end of the statement here. This is your real God right here. Money. And I believe it states that money, the love of money is the rule of all evil. Don't it say that? But y'all say Black Lives Matter. if Black Lives Matter, why aren't we teaching our children real morality? Oh yeah, I'm bringing it today because we have fallen so low and we can't see it. We can't see the destruction that our young people are going through right now. We can't see it. But we say Black Lives Matter, okay? If Black lives really matter, then I have another question for you. Let me go back here. Because here's my next question. If Black lives really matter, why aren't we supporting groups like this organization? Revolutionary Black Panther Party. Y'all tell me Black lives matter, but we can't get 25 people to attend a meeting. And even if you don't want to be seen connected to an organization like this, why can't you fund an organization like this instead of the bullshit ass Black Lives Matter? Yeah, I'm hot now, so forgive the language. But y'all say Black Lives Matter. If Black Lives Matter, why can't you join an organization called the Black Alliance for Peace? You know why the Black Alliance for Peace is something that you should be a part of? Because while you running around here telling our young people to stop the violence, what's going on in the world right now in the Ukraine? Violence. Do y'all know that out of the 300 and some odd years this country has been in existence, that 97% of the time this country has been in existence, they've been involved in a war in one form or another? You don't have to believe me, look the shit up. Look it up. But you say Black Lives Matter when violence is used to resolve conflict across this country, across this world all the time, and you do nothing other than support the system that creates this violence across the world. You didn't even hear Dr. King, where Dr. King told you, beyond Vietnam, he told you the United States is the greatest purveyor of violence on the planet. Y'all didn't hear him. This nation didn't hear Eisenhower as he was leaving office, and he warned about the military-industrial complex and the threat that it will become. We didn't hear it. Yet, I can find Deltas and Sister Strut supporting Democratic candidates that support war and violence, but I can't get a Sister Strut to support Black Alliance for Peace. Can we get a Sister Strut to support this? Oh yeah, I'm hot. Because I'm tired of the contradictions. And because y'all don't listen. You don't listen. You think you're right, and you've been wrong this entire time. And they say that The proof is in the pudding. Look at our society right now. Look at the amount of killing going on in our society right now. A 62-year-old man is being tagged for for shooting on Subway. And the sad thing about it, the police couldn't find him when he was sitting right in plain sight. Went to McDonald's, had him a cup of coffee, went to the bus stop and sat on the bus stop, even called the police and told them where he was. Look at what's going on in our society. The proof is in the pudding. Y'all are wrong. Deltas, you're wrong. Sororities, you're wrong. Masons, you're wrong. Eastern Stars, you're wrong. The proof is now in the pudding. What you guys are doing in secret is taking us to hell. Can't y'all see it? It's time for y'all to come up out of these secret organizations. And Black Church, I'm not even going to start on you today. That's a whole nother deal. But people that know me know that I don't go to the Black Church. Because I've seen some things early on in my life with the Black Church that kind of scarred me that I didn't understand. But now that I am a grown man and I have someone who's teaching me real biblical scripture, I can see the hypocrisy within the Black Church. Y'all wrong. Yet nobody wants to admit it. Here's another organization, Young People, All African People's Revolutionary Organization, Party. This organization has been around since the 80s. It's about Pan-Africanists, and us working together with all the countries within the Caribbean and on the African continent, as well as those in South America and here in North America. Throughout all Europe. It's about bringing all black folks together around the world. I'm gonna go ahead and wrap this thing up, but I want to remind y'all, who's y'all's God? See? Look at it. Look, the numbers don't lie. 330,000 likes on Unexpected Money is about to come your way. 454,000 comments, which means they either accepted or declined. And I bet you the majority accepted. No, I'm not going to take the time to go through it because I can bet on it right now. 12,000 shares. But we can moral confusion, sexual confusion, gender confusion, author of confusion, Satan. And it only gets 30 likes, 9 comments, and 2 shares. May you loving money, son of a gun, burn in hell. Burn, roast. Because Satan is your real God. Roasted. yeah. Oh, I had to do it today, y'all. I had to do it for a reason because I'm tired of all the BS. I'm tired of y'all walking around pretending that this thing is going to work when it's not. And for 400 years now, we have been in this country and it still has not worked for people like us. It has not worked. Okay? When are we going to realize it's time to make a change, y'all? I call this the right authority for a reason. Because the right authority would mean you understand your 400 years of misery and you will now begin to make a change before it's too late. Because it's all lining up right now. Y'all know it is. Y'all have heard the talk that we're entering end times. I'll say it again. These sororities, these fraternities, these Masons, these Elks, these Eastern Star, all these secret organizations, look, y'all got it wrong. It isn't working. Not for the masses of our people, and you're about to lead our people to hell. You got it wrong. Now I could see chucks and pearls about our so-called vice presidents. I can hear of sister struts and y'all supporting Democratic candidates. I can hear about the support about Ketanji, whatever her name is, Brown Jackson on the Supreme Court. And now y'all want to throw all this support behind her. Do you not know it's the Supreme Court of this country that has made laws that have kept us from being equal in any form in this society? I have showed you twice that the Supreme Court is compromised. Twice with Clarence Thomas and then with Scalia. The Supreme Court is compromised. But y'all don't understand that. Okay? You have no clue about it. That's why you don't understand it. You don't know. And the majority of y'all won't even mention or even accept the fact that you don't know. So you continue to go around supporting this BS and taking our people down the road to hell because you're ignorant about what's really going on. Hiding behind your fraternity, your sorority, or your Elks Lodge, or your Mason Lodge, or your Eastern Star Lodge. You're wrong. That's why this country is in the condition that it's in, and that's why the people are in the condition that they are in. It's because y'all allowed too much untruth to go unchecked. And with that, I'm gonna go ahead and wrap this up. You can reach me on my Facebook page. You can also reach me by email, ctr199.cc@gmail. Bring it on. I'm ready for it. Because you're wrong. Peace and blessings. I'll be back to y'all within the near future. Enjoy the rest of your pagan holiday. I'm out of here, y'all.